So here our chocolate coated balloon has basically set at room temperature. Before releasing the air from the balloon though, we're going to have to get the chocolate fairly firm. If we were to try to release the air from the balloon at this point, the chocolate is still soft enough that it's going to try to cling to the balloon and it risks breaking, especially up here at the edge where it's very, very thin. So before releasing the air from the balloon, we're going to put it in the fridge for really just about 5 minutes or so. Refrigerator for about 15 minutes. We can lift it up out of the sugar and then use a brush to dust away the sugar that's clinging to it. We have here a pretty good approximation of the natural shell. So our balloon chocolate shell is nice and firm now from having been in the fridge. Again, we don't leave it in there any longer than necessary to firm it up because we don't want to bring a cold piece of chocolate out into the room temperature air. So it's solidified, but it's not cold. Now we can't really pop the balloon because that's a little bit too violent an action and we really risk breaking the shell. So the way we release the air slowly is to get in there with the tips of our scissors right near the knot where the rubber is not very tense. And just make a little snip and the air will release slowly from the balloon and the balloon pulls away from the chocolate shell. Just a matter of getting in there with your fingertips and working that last little bit of the balloon away from the chocolate. And we're left with that. You good? Okay, and here's our Theraputty cigarette lighter. To unmold this, basically, we take both the Theraputty and the chocolate together out of the foil cup. And that allows you then to peel the putty away from the chocolate. And lift it away from the putty. And here's our chocolate cigarette lighter.
This is going to take serious editing at this point.
We have at our disposal these metallic dusts of various colors. These are luster dusts, they're referred to in the pastry trade. And there are edible versions of these available specifically for cake decorating purposes. People who make wedding cakes a lot of times will use these to add color to gum paste flowers or marzipan flowers. The versions that I have here are actually not ones that are approved for food use. I got these from the yard supply store, and technically these have not been signed off on by the FDA. They are the identical product that cake decorators use, but I use these just for sculpting, not technically approved for food use. They're not going to poison anyone if you get some, it won't do any. To buy a big jar of this stuff, then they're approved for food use. I got these from the yard supply store, and technically these have not been signed off on by the FDA. They are the identical product that cake decorators use, but I use these just for sculptural purposes. I use these for pieces that are not intended to be eaten because it's a whole lot cheaper to buy a big jar of this stuff than the little tiny containers that the cake decorating stores will sell you for about 10 times the price. So we're going to use these for our chocolate sculpture pieces, but keep in mind that although these are not at all toxic, they are not technically approved for food use. They're not going to poison anyone if you get some of this in you. It won't do any damage. It's just it hasn't been manufactured under conditions that are supervised by the FDA is basically what it amounts to. I have quite a wide variety. Some of these are very spectacular. This is this one, the gold and the silver are actually edible, and they're quite spectacular. Let me just demonstrate using these, what these things do, and then I'll explain some of the other options that we have available. Say for instance I wanted to leave the outside of our chocolate balloon shape here dark, but I wanted the inside to glow gold. I can easily achieve it with these dusts. I'm going to have to come up with some way of holding the outside of the cup though without getting my fingerprints all over it, because I don't want to have to worry about getting rid of those fingerprints at some point down the road. So I'm going to get a piece of plastic film into a loose wad that will insulate the chocolate from my fingers, and then I'm going to pick it up and just hold it like this with the plastic wrap. I'm going to take some of the gold powder, sprinkle it into the cap, and then I have a fluffy makeup brush that I use for dusting these luster dusts on with. And I just bunch it up and dab the bristles so that they're loaded up with the gold powder. Now I can reach that inside and just buff the inside of my balloon shape with that gold powder and try to keep any from getting on the outside. Tap out the excess. And now, as you can see, the inside of the cup is a brilliant gold. And I haven't gotten too much on the outside, so that's kind of an interesting contrasting effect that I could use in my piece. Some of the other options we have available, we have silver, which basically does the same effect with silver. But we have some of these oddball colors too. Some of these are simple colors. This one is kind of a pinkish, purplish red. This one is a blue. So those are pretty straightforward, and basically what you see is what you get. Some are produce quite an interesting effect though. This, for instance, is a powder that, depending on the angle that the light is hitting it from, looks either blue or green. So when you dust this onto a piece of chocolate, you hold it at one angle, it looks blue. If you hold it at another angle, it looks green. Let's say we want to dust our cigarette lighter here and turn it blue, for instance. I'm going to get the gold dust off my brush by basically dabbing it on the paper, and then these never get washed. These brushes never get washed. So to clean them between powders, you're basically going to blow into them out over the floor or into the garbage can, and at the same time ruffle them with your fingers. So it goes like this. And that's about as clean as it needs to be. So now I'm going to use my, I'll use True Blue, because my original cigarette lighter was this lovely shade of blue, so I'm going to more or less approximate that. Same deal. Put a little bit of the powder in the cap, load up the bristles, and brush it onto my chocolate. And it's blue. That's our random drizzle slash straw pattern that we created. This is our splatter effect, kind of the Jackson Pollock look. And this is our chocolate marble effect.